The trial was held on a space station that did not exist an hour before Empress Yunji of the Titan worlds had created it from raw cosmic dust using her powers to reshape matter. The station was made of crystal and metal that glowed with inner light, beautiful, but also terrible, because everyone knew it could be unmade just as easily as it was made. Representatives from all 17 alien civilizations gathered in the Great Chamber. The room was huge enough to hold beings of many different sizes, from tiny energy creatures who lived in special containers to massive rock beings who had to be careful not to break the floor when they walked. Commander Taman and Captain Jiho stood in the center of the chamber, surrounded by beings whose very presence warped the air around them. Their Valdoran uniforms looked shabby and small compared to the magnificent aliens who had come to judge them. Miran Kim sat in a place of honor as the only surviving family member of the murdered diplomat. She wore a simple black dress that someone had brought from Earth, but the alien beings treated her like royalty. They knew she carried the bloodline of their beloved friend. General Wanbin spoke for the prosecution, his deep voice echoing through the crystal chamber. The defendants killed a being who had earned the respect and protection of 17 civilizations. This was not an act of war. It was the assassination of a diplomat who was under the protection of multiple galactic powers. He gestured toward historical records that floated in the air like glowing screens. Captain Hyunwoo Kim spent 30 years of his life traveling between our worlds. He prevented wars that would have killed billions. He negotiated peace treaties that still hold today. He saved entire species from extinction. The evidence was presented without emotion. Recorded communications from the Valdoran ship showing the orders to kill harmless civilians. Tactical data proving they had targeted Earth because they thought it was defenseless. Witness testimony from the surviving Valdoran soldiers who had been on the surface. Captain Jiho tried to defend his actions. "We were following orders," he said. "Our empire told us to eliminate potential resistance leaders. We did not know this human had connections to alien powers." Commander Sumin floated forward, her silver skin pulsing with controlled anger. "Ignorance is not a defense for murder," she said. "Your orders were to kill an innocent old man and terrorize his family. The fact that you did not know he was beloved across the galaxy makes your crime worse, not better." Admiral Daehyun added his mechanical voice to the discussion. "Your empire chose to attack Earth because you believed humans were weak and had no powerful friends. You planned to conquer them through fear and violence. You never bothered to learn who you were really fighting." The alien judges began to deliberate, but it did not take long. The evidence was clear, and there could be only one verdict. Captain Jiho had pulled the trigger that killed Captain Kim. Commander Taman had given the orders that made it happen. The Valdoran Empire had planned and executed the assassination of a protected diplomat. Empress Yunji announced the sentence in a voice that made the crystal walls ring like bells. "Captain Jiho, you fired the weapon that killed our friend. You will be executed immediately for murder. Commander Taman, you gave the orders that led to his death. You will be imprisoned for life as a war criminal, but the real punishment extends beyond you two individuals." She continued, "The Valdoran Empire will surrender all military assets and submit to supervision by a joint alien council. Your species will learn to live in peace, or it will not live at all." The sentence for the Valdoran military was total disarmament. Every warship would be dismantled. Every weapons factory would be shut down. Every soldier would be retrained to do useful work like farming or building schools. The empire that had terrorized dozens of worlds was being dissolved. During the 1-hour trial, the alien fleets had not been sitting idle. Using technology far beyond anything the Valdorans possessed, they had systematically taken apart every military installation in Valdoran. Space weapons that could destroy planets were carefully removed and stored safely away. Not a single civilian had been harmed, but the war machine that had threatened peaceful worlds for decades was simply gone. Valdoran. Soldiers woke up to find their barracks filled with alien supervisors who handed them farming tools instead of weapons. The most advanced warships in the Valdoran fleet found their engines powered down and their weapon systems replaced with medical equipment. Instead of carrying death across the galaxy, they would now carry supplies to worlds that needed help. Some Valdoran military leaders tried to resist, but they quickly learned that fighting beings who could manipulate matter with their thoughts was impossible. Their secret bunkers were opened like tin cans. Their hidden weapons caches were found and emptied. Their escape plans were blocked by ships that could travel faster than light. The Valdoran homeworld still existed, but it was no longer the center of an aggressive empire. Instead, it was a supervised world where former soldiers would learn that strength should be used to protect people, not hurt them. The alien civilizations would remain in orbit until a new generation of Valdorans grew up understanding the value of peace. Captain Jihos' execution was quick and merciful considering what he had done. The Drakmor had wanted to challenge him to single combat, but the other aliens insisted on a more civilized approach. A device from the ethereal collective simply made him cease to exist without pain or suffering. Commander Taman was taken to a prison ship where he would spend the rest of his life studying the history of the beings his empire had tried to conquer. He would learn about every world the Valdorans had attacked and every life they had destroyed. Perhaps someday he would understand why his actions had been wrong. But before the trial ended, Miran Kim asked to speak. She stood up in front of the assembled alien representatives, looking very small and young compared to these ancient, powerful beings. But when she spoke, her voice carried the same quiet strength that her grandfather had possessed. My grandfather never wanted to be remembered as a great leader or powerful diplomat. She said, he just wanted to help people understand each other. He told me that the most important thing in life was to be kind to others, even when they were different from you. She looked around at the incredible beings who had traveled across the galaxy to honor an old farmer. I think he would be happy knowing that his death led to peace instead of more war. You came here to get revenge, but instead, you are teaching the Valdorans how to live better lives. Thank you for showing me that friendship can be stronger than any empire, she continued. My grandfather always said that the best way to defeat an enemy is to turn them into a friend. I hope that someday the Valdoran people will understand what he meant. The alien representatives were moved by the wisdom of this young human. Many of them had children of their own, and they recognized the courage it took for her to speak words of forgiveness instead of hatred. She had inherited more than just her grandfather's blood. She had inherited his spirit as the space station dissolved back into cosmic dust, and the alien fleets prepared to return to their home worlds. Earth found itself with new friends and protectors, the secret alliances that Hyunwoo Kim had built. In silence would now operate openly. Humanity would never again face threats like the Valdoran Empire alone, because they had proven that even the smallest acts of kindness could create bonds strong enough to move mountains, or in this case strong enough to move entire star fleets across the galaxy. The Old Man's Garden in the Korean mountains became a memorial site tended by visitors from across the galaxy who came to pay their respects to the human who had taught them all the true meaning of strength. And in the small village where it all began, children would grow up hearing stories about their grandfather who could move stars not through force, but through friendship. The Valdoran Empire was gone, but something better would grow in its place, a civilization that understood that real power came from helping others instead of hurting them. And all because 17 different alien species had loved one old human enough to cross the galaxy to protect his memory. The trial lasted exactly 1 hour. It was held on a neutral space station that materialized between Earth and Mars, constructed by the Titan Empress specifically for this purpose. Representatives from all 17 alien civilizations sat in judgment, with Miran Kim given the place of honor as the sole surviving family member of the deceased. Commander Taman and Captain Jiho stood in the center of the crystalline chamber, surrounded by beings whose very presence warped the air around them. The evidence was presented without emotion: recorded communications, tactical data, and witness testimony from the surviving Valdoran soldiers. There was no defense possible. They had murdered an unarmed civilian who posed no threat to anyone. General Wanban spoke for the prosecution. The defendant killed a being who had earned the respect and protection of 17 civilizations. This was not an act of war. It was an assassination of a diplomat under the protection of multiple galactic powers. The penalty for such actions has been established by treaty for over a century. The sentence was unanimous. Captain Jiho would be executed immediately for pulling the trigger. Commander Taman would be imprisoned for life as the one who gave the orders. The Valdoran Empire would surrender all military assets and submit to supervision by a joint alien council until they could prove they understood the concepts of honor and justice. But the real punishment had already begun. During the hour-long trial, the alien fleets had not been idle. Using technology far beyond anything the Valdorans possessed, they had systematically dismantled every military installation, weapons factory, and government facility in the Empire. Not a single civilian had been harmed, but the war machine that had threatened peaceful worlds for decades was simply gone. The Valdoran homeworld still existed, but it was no longer the center of an aggressive empire. Instead, it was a supervised world where former soldiers would learn to grow crops and build schools instead of battleships. The alien civilizations would remain in orbit until a new generation of Valdorans grew up understanding that strength should be used to protect the innocent, not exploit them. Miran stood before the assembled representatives and spoke in a clear voice. My grandfather never wanted to be remembered as a great leader or powerful diplomat. He just wanted to help people understand each other. I think he would be happy knowing that his death led to peace instead of war. She paused, looking around at the incredible beings who had traveled across the galaxy to honor an old farmer. Thank you for showing me that friendship can be stronger than any empire. As the space station dissolved back into energy and the alien fleets prepared to return to their home worlds, Earth found itself with new friends and protectors. The secret alliances that Yunwoo Kim had built in silence would now operate in the open, ensuring that humanity would never face threats like the Valdoran Empire alone. The old man's garden in the Korean mountains was transformed into a memorial, tended by visitors from across the galaxy, who came to pay their respects to the human who had taught them all the true meaning of strength. And in the small village, where it all began, children would grow up hearing stories about their grandfather, who could move stars not through force, but through kindness. Commander Taman stood in his command center watching displays that showed more alien ships than he had ever seen in one place. His single warship was now completely surrounded by vessels from 17 different civilizations. Each one of them had enough firepower to destroy his ship 100 times over. Lieutenant Hyeri was working frantically at her station, trying to make sense of all the incoming data. Her purple face was covered with sweat, and her hands were shaking as she tried to identify the alien fleet's commander. These are not just any ships, she said. Many of these vessels are legendary. Some of them have not been seen in space for over 50 years. Taman looked at the tactical display and felt his blood turn cold. The massive black ship belonged to General Wanban, who had never lost a battle in 300 years of warfare. The crystal ships were from the ethereal collective, who could manipulate energy itself. The dark metal vessels were void hunter ships that could phase through solid matter. Why are they all here? He asked. What could possibly make so many different civilizations work together? That was when the communication requests started flooding in. But these were not demands for surrender anymore. Instead, he was receiving what appeared to be historical files, data packets containing records that went back 50 years. Each file was marked with the same name, Captain Yunwoo Kim Taman, opened the first file, and began reading. The document described how a young human captain had prevented a war between two alien species by carrying messages between their fleets for 3 weeks straight. He had refused payment and only asked that the two sides try to understand each other better. The second file told about the same human saving an entire planet by warning them about a supernova that their scientists had missed. He had flown his small ship into dangerous radiation zones to collect the data needed to prove his calculations. He had nearly died but saved billions of lives. File after file revealed the incredible history of the old man they had just killed. Captain Kim had been involved in every major peace negotiation for 3 decades. He had stopped wars, prevented genocides, and helped. Species that had been enemies for centuries learned to work together. Most shocking of all were the records of what different alien leaders had offered him. The Drakmor had wanted to make him a general in their army. The Ethereals had offered to extend his lifespan to match their own 1,000-year life cycles. The Titan Empress had proposed marriage to create an alliance between their species. Every single time, Captain Kim had politely refused. He said he only wanted to go home to Earth and grow vegetables in a quiet village. All he ever asked for was friendship between the species and the promise that they would try to solve their problems with words instead of weapons. Taman realized with growing horror that they had not just killed a random old farmer. They had assassinated the most respected diplomat in galactic history, a being who had earned the love and loyalty of the most powerful civilizations in known space. More reports came in from across Valdoran space. Alien fleets had appeared at every major colony and military base. The Empire's entire military was outnumbered. 1,000-to-1 ships that had been considered mythical were suddenly very real and very angry. The final communication came from Empress Yunji of the Titan worlds. Her message was broadcast on every frequency so that everyone in Valdoran space could hear it. Commander Taman of the Valdoran Empire, you have murdered our friend and teacher. You have one choice remaining. Surrender yourself and your crew to face justice, or watch as your entire civilization pays the price for your actions. We have the power to move stars and reshape planets. Do not think that your homeworld is safe from our reach. Taman looked around his bridge and saw fear in every face. His crew had joined the military to conquer weak species and take their resources. They had never expected to face beings who could actually threaten the mighty Valdoran Empire. Sir, what are your orders? Asked Commander Yuna. His tactical officer, the alien fleets are not attacking yet, but they have us completely surrounded. Any attempt to move will result in immediate destruction. Taman thought about his options. He could surrender his ship and crew knowing they would probably all be executed for war crimes, or he could refuse and watch as these ancient powers turned their attention to the Valdoran homeworld, where his family lived. Either way, his military career was over. The Valdoran Empire, as he knew it was, finished all, because one captain had decided it would be easy to kill a harmless old human farmer down on Earth. Captain Jiho was discovering that his situation was even worse. His strike team was trapped in the Korean village, surrounded by the most powerful beings in the galaxy. Their weapons were gone, their communication equipment was dead, and strange ships kept appearing in the sky above them. The alien beings were not paying much attention to the Valdoran soldiers anymore. They were too busy honoring their dead friend. Each species had brought some kind of tribute to place beside Hyunwoo's body, glowing flowers from distant worlds, singing crystals that played beautiful music, metal sculptures that moved like living things. But Jiho could feel their anger like heat from a fire. They were holding back their rage for now, but he knew it would not last forever. These beings had come from across the galaxy to see justice done, and they were not going to leave disappointed. One of his soldiers, Private Kogan, tried to run toward the forest, but found his legs would not obey him. The ethereal beings had trapped all the Valdorans in place with their mental powers. They could only stand and watch as more alien ships arrived. vessel that looked like it was made of living wood landed nearby, and tree-like beings emerged from it. They moved slowly, but with great dignity, and placed flowering branches beside the dead human. These were the forest guardians who had learned sustainable farming techniques from Captain Kim decades ago. Another ship that seemed to be made of pure water settled on the village pond. Water beings flowed out and began creating a memorial fountain around Hyun-woo's body. They sang in voices like flowing streams about how the human had helped them make peace with a species that lived on desert worlds. Each arrival made Captain Jiho's situation more hopeless. These were not just random aliens who happened to like the old farmer. These were representatives of the most advanced civilizations in known space, and they all had personal reasons to want the Valdorans dead. General Wanbin approached the group of trapped soldiers and studied them with his burning red eyes. "You came here to kill an innocent old man," he said in his deep, rumbling voice. "You thought it would be easy because humans seem weak to you." The massive Drakmor warrior leaned down until his terrifying face was close to Captain Jiho. "But you did not understand what kind of human. You were killing Captain Kim was not weak. He was the strongest being I have ever known, because he chose to use his strength to help others instead of hurting them, Admiral." Dae-hyun joined the conversation, his mechanical parts whirring. As he moved, "Your species values military power above all else," he said. "But true strength comes from sacrifice and service. Captain Kim had more real power than your entire empire because people chose to follow him out of love instead of fear. Commander." Suman floated closer, her silver skin glowing with inner light. "The captain could have ruled half the galaxy if he had wanted to," she said. "Every species he helped offered him wealth and position and power, but he only wanted to go home and be with his family." That kind of wisdom is rarer than any treasure. More alien leaders joined the group around the Valdoran soldiers. Each one told stories about Captain Kim and explained why his death could not go unpunished. They spoke of debts that could never be repaid and friendships that had lasted across decades. Captain Jiho finally found his voice. Why, he asked. Why did he live like a simple farmer if he was so important? Why did he hide in this small village instead of claiming the power you say he earned, because that is what made him worthy of that power? General Wanbin replied. He understood that true leaders serve others, not themselves. He chose to grow food and raise his granddaughter because those were more important to him than ruling empires. The alien beings began to discuss what should be done with the Valdorans. Some wanted immediate execution. Others preferred to let them live so they could spread word of what happened when someone harmed Captain Kim's family. But they all agreed on one thing. The Valdoran Empire had to be stopped from ever threatening peaceful worlds again. The military machine that had conquered dozens of species was about to face justice from beings who had the power to dismantle it completely, in orbit above Earth. Commander Taman watched helplessly as his warship was boarded by alien forces. They came through the walls like ghosts and disabled his weapons without firing a shot. His crew surrendered without resistance, knowing that fighting would only make their fate worse. The hunt for the Valdorans was over. Now came the time for judgment. Miran knelt beside her grandfather's body in the small garden where she had learned to grow vegetables and read about distant stars. The Valdoran soldiers were talking among themselves in their alien language, but she could tell they were nervous. Captain Jiho kept looking up at the sky as if he was expecting something terrible to happen. His communicator was making strange sounds, and he could not seem to contact his ship properly. The other soldiers were checking their weapons and scanning the horizon for threats. None of them understood what was happening, but they all felt like they were being watched. That was when the first ship appeared in the sky above them. It came out of nowhere, like it had been invisible just a moment before. The ship was made of crystal that seemed to bend light around itself, making it hard to look at directly. Beautiful geometric patterns covered its surface, and it moved through the air without making any sound at all. The Valderan soldiers raised their plasma rifles and fired at the strange ship, but their energy bolts simply passed through the crystal hull without causing any damage. The ship settled down in the field next to Hyunwoo's house, as gently as a falling leaf from the crystal ship. Emerged a being that looked almost human, except for her silver skin and eyes that glowed like stars. She was tall and graceful and seemed to float above the ground rather than walk. Her long hair moved in a wind that no one else could feel. This was Commander Sumin of the Ethereal Collective. She moved with liquid grace as she approached the garden, her glowing eyes fixed on Miran with an expression of infinite sadness. When she spoke, her voice seemed to come from everywhere at once. Child of Hyunwoo. She said, your grandfather was our friend. These beings have committed a great wrong, and they will answer for it. She gestured toward the Valderan soldiers, and their weapons simply crumbled to dust in their hands. The soldiers tried to run, but found their feet frozen to the ground by invisible force. They could only stand there and wait for whatever was going to happen. Next, more ships began appearing in the sky above the village. A massive black vessel shaped like a hunting bird landed in the field with a sound like thunder. Red light poured from its hull as smaller ships launched toward the surface. The ship belonged to the Drakmor Empire, and everyone in the galaxy knew what that meant. From the black ship emerged warriors. That looked like the monsters from Human Nightmares. They were 3 meters tall with natural armor covering their bodies. Their forearms ended in claws that could cut through steel like paper. Their faces had too many teeth, and their red eyes burned with fury. The leader of these warriors approached Miran and knelt down beside Hyunwoo's body. Despite his terrifying appearance, his voice was gentle when he spoke to her. I am General Wanbin of Drakmor, he said. The captain saved my people from extinction 50 years ago. His death will be avenged 1,000-fold. He stood up and pointed one massive claw at Captain Jiho, who was trying to hide behind his frozen soldiers. You killed a being worth more than your entire species, he growled. Pray to whatever gods you worship, because you will meet them very soon. The third ship to arrive was the strangest of all. It looked like it was made of living metal that constantly changed shape as it moved through the sky. Parts of it would stretch and bend, while other sections would split apart and reconnect. The ship seemed more alive than machine. This was a Void Hunter vessel, and from it emerged Admiral Daehyun. His body was a perfect fusion of organic tissue and advanced technology. Half of his face was human, while the other half was mechanical. His arms were cybernetic, but his heart still beat with organic blood. Captain Kim taught my people that honor exists in many forms. Admiral Daehyun said, his voice carrying electronic harmonics. He showed us that synthetic beings could possess souls. For that gift, we pledged our protection to his bloodline. He turned his glowing red mechanical eye toward the terrified Valdoran soldiers. You have harmed one under our protection. This cannot be forgiven. More and more ships filled the sky above the small Korean village. Each one was different, representing a unique alien civilization, but they all shared the same purpose. They had come to honor Hyunwoo Kim's memory and protect his granddaughter. Ship that looked like it was made of pure light belonged to the Star Shepherds, who could travel between dimensions. A vessel covered in living vines carried representatives of the plant collective who had learned agriculture from human farmers. A massive sphere of dark energy held the Keepers of the Deep, who normally never left their underwater worlds. Miran watched in amazement as beings from across the galaxy gathered around her grandfather's body. Some looked almost human, while others were so alien she could barely understand what she was seeing. But they all knelt beside the old man and spoke words of respect in their own languages. One by one, they approached her and introduced themselves. Each had a story about how her grandfather had helped their people save lives, prevent wars, or find peace. She began to understand that the kind old man who had taught her to grow tomatoes had secretly been one of the most important people in galactic history. A being made of crystallized sound told her how Captain Kim had negotiated a peace treaty between their people and a race of creatures made of pure energy. A warrior covered in metal scales explained how he had saved their homeworld from a black hole that was going to destroy their solar system. Each story revealed another piece of her grandfather's hidden life. He had spent 30 years traveling between the stars, solving problems and helping different species learn to work together. But he had never asked for anything in return except friendship and the promise that he could go home to Earth when he was ready. Now these powerful beings had come to repay their debts to him. They had traveled across vast distances and put aside ancient rivalries just to honor the memory of an old human farmer. And they were all looking at Captain Jiho and his soldiers with expressions that promised terrible revenge. The Valderan captain was trying desperately to contact his ship, but his communication equipment was not working. Strange interference was blocking all of his transmissions. He was trapped on a world that had suddenly become the center of the largest military gathering in recent galactic history. Commander Suman approached Miran and knelt down beside her. "Do not fear, child," she said. "Your grandfather spoke of you often in his messages to us. He was very proud of your intelligence and kindness." Miran looked up at the strange, beautiful being with tears in her eyes. "My grandfather told me stories about friends among the stars, but I thought they were just stories to help me sleep. They were all true." Commander Suman replied, "Every adventure, every friend, every world he saved was real. He could have claimed great power and wealth for his deeds, but all he wanted was to come home and raise his granddaughter in peace." General Wanbin stepped forward, his massive form casting a shadow over the small group. "The debt we owe your grandfather can never be fully repaid," he said. "But we can ensure that those who harmed him face justice, and we can promise that you will never be alone as long as any of us still live." Admiral Dae-hyun activated a device on his mechanical arm and scanned the area around Hyun-woo's body. "Our sensors detect that he activated an emergency beacon. Before he died, he said, the quantum signature matches the communication device we gave him 50 years ago. He knew he was going to die, and he chose to call us." More ships continued to arrive until the sky was dark with alien vessels. Some were so large they blocked out the sun, while others were small and fast like deadly insects. The combined firepower hovering above the village could have destroyed entire star systems. But they were not here to destroy anything. They were here to honor a friend and protect his family. From the smallest scout ship to the largest battlecruiser every vessel carried, beings who owed their lives or their people's survival to Captain Hyun-woo. Kim Captain Jiho and his soldiers were completely surrounded now. They had come to kill one helpless old man and instead had triggered the largest military response in galactic history. Their plasma rifles were gone, their communication was blocked, and their ship was nowhere to be seen, i.e., alien beings began to form a circle around Hyun-woo's body, each one placing some kind of offering beside him, flowers that glowed with inner light, crystals that sang beautiful songs, small machines that projected images of distant worlds he had saved, metal sculptures that shifted and changed, like living art. Miran realized she was witnessing something that had never happened before in galactic history. 17 different alien civilizations had put aside their differences and come together to honor one human being. Her grandfather had built bridges between worlds that most people could not even imagine. And now the beings he had helped were here to make sure that his sacrifice would not be forgotten, and that his family would be protected. Forever, the reckoning for the Valderans was about to begin. Captain Jiho stood over the dead body of Hyunwoo Kim in the small garden. The old man lay among his tomato plants with a smoking hole in his chest. The plasma bolt had done its job quickly and cleanly. Jiho felt satisfied with completing his mission. So easily, these humans were even weaker than the reports had said. Take pictures of the body, he ordered his soldiers. Make sure you get good shots of his face. The High Command wants proof that the target is eliminated. Then we return to the ship. Other Valdoran warriors activated their recording devices and began documenting the scene. One of them grabbed Miran by the arm and dragged her closer to her grandfather's body. She was crying and trying to pull away, but the soldiers were much stronger. Then a 16-year-old girl stopped struggling human child. One of them said, "This will make better propaganda footage if you are in the pictures. Your people need to see what happens when they resist the Valdoran Empire." Miran looked down at her grandfather and felt something break inside her heart. He had raised her since she was 7 years old after her parents died. He had taught her to read the stars and told her stories about amazing worlds beyond Earth. He had been the kindest person she had ever known, and now he was gone. But she remembered his last words about friends in the stars who were real. She did not understand what he had meant, but she hoped somehow he had been telling the truth. Captain Jiho activated his communicator and contacted. Commander Taemin on the ship mission, accomplished. Commander, the target has been eliminated. We have full documentation of the kill. Requesting immediate extraction, excellent work. Captain Taemin replied, return to the ship immediately. We have other targets to hit before the humans can organize any kind of response. But what none of the Valdorans knew was that across the galaxy, ancient communication networks were lighting up with emergency signals. The message code Phoenix. They threatened my family had reached beings who had been waiting 50 years to repay their debts to one special human on the red desert world of Drakmor. General Wanbin received the signal through quantum channels embedded in his fortress. His massive body was covered in natural armor that could stop most weapons. His 4 arms ended in claws that could tear through metal. His species had evolved from predators, and they still looked like the monsters from human nightmares. But when General Wanbin read the message, his red eyes filled with something that looked almost like tears. 50 years ago, his people had been dying from a plague that their scientists could not cure. Their enemies had released a biological weapon that was killing millions of Drakmor warriors every day. That was when a young human captain had arrived in a small ship. He had risked his life to bring medical supplies from Earth. Human doctors had worked with Drakmor scientists to find a cure. Captain Kim had stayed for 6 months, helping coordinate the relief efforts. He had saved over 2 billion lives and never asked for anything in return. Now someone had killed that same human and threatened his family. General Wanbin stood up from his throne and roared, so loud that the walls of his fortress shook. He pressed a button that activated alarms all across his world. Within minutes, every Drakmor warrior was running to their battle stations. Prepare the war fleet. Wanbin commanded, we go to honor our debt to Captain Kim. Whoever killed him will learn why the Drakmor are feared across the galaxy. Meanwhile, in the crystal ships floating between stars, Commander Sumin felt the message resonate through her telepathic mind. Her people, the ethereal collective, were beings of pure energy who had learned to take solid form. The crystals that made up their ships were actually living creatures that could travel faster than light. Sumin remembered the day she had first met Captain Kim. Her people had been preparing for war with a neighboring star system over a dispute about mining rights. Millions would have died in the fighting. Both sides were too proud to back down and too angry to negotiate. But then a small Earthship had appeared between the 2 fleets. A young human had broadcast a message to both sides asking for just 1 day to find a solution. He had spent 24 hours flying back and forth between the warships, carrying messages and proposals that slowly brought the two sides together. Captain Kim had prevented a war that would have destroyed two civilizations. He had taught Suman about something her people had never understood before, the concept of friendship. The idea that beings could care about each other even when they had nothing to gain from it. Now that same human was dead, and Suman felt rage burning through her energy form. She sent out a telepathic call to all ethereal ships across the galaxy. The message was simple. Captain Kim needs us. We go to war in. The dark void between galaxies where normal matter could not survive, Admiral Dae-hyun received the quantum signal through his cybernetic implants. His body was half machine and half organic tissue, a perfect fusion of technology and biology that most beings found disturbing to look at. The Void Hunters were artificial beings created by an ancient race that had gone extinct. They had spent centuries being treated like property by other species, bought and sold like tools used for dangerous missions and thrown away when they were damaged. But Captain Kim had been different. When he had encountered a Void Hunter ship, he had asked to speak with their leader as an equal. He had helped negotiate their acceptance into the Galactic Council. As a free species with rights and representation, he had given them something they had never had before. Dignity Admiral Dae-hyun began powering up his ship's weapons systems. His mechanical parts hummed with energy while his organic brain burned. With fury, someone had killed the being who had given his people their freedom, that someone would pay with their lives. The most dangerous response came from the Titan worlds, where Empress Yunji ruled over beings who could manipulate matter with their thoughts. Her palace was made of crystal that changed colors with her emotions. Right now it was burning red with rage. 50 years ago, she had been a young princess visiting a trade station when assassins from a rival house had tried to kill her. Her guards were outnumbered and outgunned. She was going to die far from home with no one to remember her name. But then a human captain had appeared with his small crew. He had fought beside her guards for 3 days, holding off wave after wave of attackers. He had been wounded 7 times, but kept fighting until help arrived. He had saved her life and asked for nothing in return. When she became empress, she had offered him anything he wanted: a fleet of ships, immortality, a place of honor. In her court, all he had asked for was friendship between their peoples and permission to visit her world someday to see her gardens. Now someone had murdered her friend, and Empress Yunji was ready to reshape entire solar systems to get revenge. She began gathering her most powerful warriors, the ones who could move planets with their minds. Across 17 different star systems, alien fleets were powering up weapons that had not been fired in decades. Ships that were legendary for their power were leaving dockyards and heading toward Valdoran space. Some of these races had been enemies for centuries, but they all shared one thing in common. They owed everything to Captain Hyunwoo Kim, and someone had just made the biggest mistake in galactic history. Back on the Valdoran warship, Commander Taemin was reviewing reports from other strike teams when his communications officer, Lieutenant Hyeri, burst onto the bridge. Her purple face was pale with fear, and her hands were shaking. As she handed him multiple urgent messages, "Commander, we are receiving priority signals from across the galaxy." She said, "Long-range sensors are detecting massive fleet movements in 17 different star systems. Ancient warships that have been in storage for decades are suddenly active again." Taemin frowned and looked at the reports. This made no sense. The Valdoran Empire had been careful to avoid major powers when planning their invasion of Earth. They had specifically chosen to attack a world with no significant allies or protection. "What kind of ships are we seeing?" he asked. "Everything," Sir Hyeri replied. "Drakmor, war fleets, ethereal crystal ships, void hunter destroyers, even ships from the Titan worlds that never leave their home system. They are all heading toward our space team," and felt cold fear creeping up his spine. Some of those names represented civilizations that could destroy the entire Valdoran Empire if they wanted to. Why would they all be mobilizing at the same time? Then the first communication came in. It was a message from General Wanbin of Drakmor, broadcast on all frequencies. You have 1 hour to surrender the beings responsible for killing Hunwoo Kim. If you refuse, we will consider your entire species an enemy of honor. Taemin stared at the message in shock. How did the Drakmor know about their mission? And why did they care about one old human farmer? The intelligence reports had said nothing about this. Kim having connections to alien powers. More. Messages began flooding in from across the galaxy. The ethereal collective demanded justice for their murdered friend. The Void, hunters wanted the killers delivered to them for execution. The Titan Empress promised to turn the Valdoran homeworld into cosmic dust. If they did not surrender immediately, Commander Yuna, his tactical officer, ran analysis on the incoming fleets and went white with terror. Sir, if even half of these forces are real, they represent enough firepower to sterilize 1,000 worlds, and they are all converging on our position. Taemin tried to contact the Valdoran High Command, but found the communication channels jammed with incoming threats. How was this possible? Who was? Commander Taemin walked across the metal floor of his big warship. His black boots made loud sounds with each step. The bridge was full of lights and screens, showing him everything about the small blue planet below Earth looked so quiet and peaceful. From up here in space, white clouds moved slowly around the green and brown land like soft cotton balls. Taemin was tall and strong with purple skin and 4 arms like all Valdoran warriors. His yellow eyes glowed in the dark as he looked at the planet. His people had been planning this attack for many months. Earth was supposed to be easy to take. The humans had no real weapons that could fight against Valdoran technology. They were weak and divided, always fighting among themselves. The plan was simple. Kill the important humans first, then the rest would give up without a fight. Valdoran spies had made a list of all the human leaders who might try to fight back. Presidents and generals and scientists were all marked for death. But there was one name on the list that made Taemin laugh. Hunwoo Kim, age 72. Lives alone in a small mountain village in Korea with his granddaughter. The report said he was just an old farmer who grew vegetables and had no weapons. The intelligence officers thought he might be some kind of village leader, but they were not sure why anyone would care about him. Taemin shook his head. Why waste time on such a weak old human? But orders were orders. The Valdoran Empire wanted to send a clear message. To Earth, kill everyone who might resist, even the harmless old ones. Show the humans that nobody was safe from Valdoran power. He called Captain Jiho to the bridge. Jiho was his best fighter, a warrior who had destroyed cities on 12 different worlds. His red armor was covered with marks, showing all his victories. His plasma rifle could cut through solid metal, like it was paper. Your mission is simple, Taemin told him. Take a small team down to the surface, find this old human farmer and kill him. Make sure the other humans see what happens. Record everything so we can show it to their leaders. Jiho looked at the file and frowned. Commander, this target seems very weak. Is this really necessary? Taemin nodded. Orders from the High Command, they want the humans to understand that resistance is useless. If we kill their strong leaders, they might still fight, but if we kill their weak and helpless ones, they will know that nobody can hide from us, down on Earth in a small village in the mountains of Korea. An old man was working in his garden. Hunwoo Kim moved slowly between the rows of tomatoes and peppers. His back was bent with age, and his hair was white as snow. He wore simple farmer clothes, and his hands were dirty from working in the soil. His granddaughter Moran sat on the wooden porch reading a book. She was 16 years old with bright eyes and long black hair. She looked up from her book and smiled at her grandfather. Are you sure you don't want help with the garden? Hunwoo smiled back at her. No, child. You focus on your studies. I have been growing vegetables longer than you have been alive. These old hands still remember what to do. What Moran did not know was that her grandfather had not always been a simple farmer. 50 years ago, he had been Captain Kim of the Earth Defense Corps, one of the first humans to travel to the stars and meet alien races. He had spent 30 years moving between different worlds, learning languages, and making friends with beings that most humans had never seen. He had saved entire planets from disasters, stopped wars before they could start, helped alien races make peace with each other. The most powerful beings in the galaxy knew his name and respected him more than they respected their own leaders. But none of this was in any Earth government files because Captain Kim had always worked in secret. After 30 years of traveling the stars, he had grown tired. He wanted to come home to Earth and live quietly. So he had retired to this small village to grow vegetables and take care of his granddaughter after her parents died in a car accident. The alien friends he had made across the galaxy had promised to leave him alone. He just wanted peace. Hidden in his walking stick was a communication device that could reach any corner of the galaxy in seconds. It had been a gift from the Ethereal Collective 50 years ago. He had hoped never to use it again. But sometimes the past comes back to find you. Valderan dropship came down from the sky like a falling star. Its engines burned the grass as it landed in the field next to Hyunwoo's house. 6 soldiers in red armor stepped out, carrying weapons that hummed with deadly energy. Captain Jiho led them across the field toward the small wooden house. Hyunwoo was still kneeling in his garden when he saw them coming. He stood up slowly and brushed the dirt off his hands. He was not surprised. Somehow, he had always known this day would come. The galaxy was too big and too dangerous for an old soldier to hide forever. Miran saw the soldiers coming and ran to her grandfather. "Who are they? What do they want?" "Stay calm, child," Hyunwoo said quietly. "Remember what I taught you about being brave. When bad things happen, we must face them with honor." Captain Jiho walked up to the old man and pointed his weapon at him. "Are you Hyunwoo Kim? The one they call a village leader? I am just a farmer." Hyunwoo replied calmly. "What do you want with me, the Valderan?" Captain laughed. "You are marked for death, old human. Our empire has decided that all resistance to our rule must be eliminated. You and your granddaughter will serve as an example to your species." Miran stepped forward, but her grandfather held up his hand to stop her. "Please. She is just a child. She has done nothing wrong. If you must kill someone, kill me, but leave her alone." Jiho considered this. The mission was to kill the old man and send a message. Killing the girl, too, would make the message stronger, but it was not specifically ordered. "Very well, old human. You have 5 minutes to say goodbye to the child, then you die, and we broadcast your death to your planet." Hyunwoo nodded and walked over to Miran. He hugged her tight and whispered in her ear, "Remember everything I taught you about the stars, the friends I told you about in my stories. They are all real, and they will come if you need them." Then he pulled his walking stick closer and pressed a hidden button, a small device inside. The stick activated, sending a message across the galaxy. The message was short, but it would change everything. Code Phoenix. "They threatened my family." Across the stars on worlds that most humans had never heard of, ancient communication systems began to receive the signal. Beings who had not spoken to each other in years suddenly remembered a young human captain who had saved their worlds and asked for nothing in return. On the warrior planet of Drakmor, General Wanbin was sitting on his throne of black stone. When the message arrived, his red eyes blazed with fury. Captain Kim had saved his people from a plague that would have killed billions. Now someone had threatened his family. The debt of honor demanded action in the crystal ships floating between the stars. Commander Suman felt the message echo through her mind. She remembered a human who had taught her people about friendship and sacrifice. Now that human was in danger, the ethereal collective would not allow this in the dark void. Between galaxies, Admiral Daehyun received the signal through quantum channels. His mechanical body hummed with energy. Captain Kim had been the only being to treat his cyborg race as equals rather than machines. Now someone would pay for threatening their friend on the Titan worlds where beings could reshape matter with their thoughts. Empress Yunji stood up from her crystal palace. She owed everything to the human who had saved her life when she was young. Now he needed help back in the Korean. Village Hyunwoo finished saying goodbye to his granddaughter and walked calmly toward the Valdoran soldiers. Captain Jiho raised his plasma rifle and aimed it at the old man's chest. "Any last words?" "Human?" "Yes," Hyunwoo said with a small smile. "You have just made the biggest mistake in galactic history." Jiho pulled the trigger. The plasma bolt hit Hyunwoo in the chest and he fell to the ground in his garden where he had grown tomatoes and taught his granddaughter about the stars. Miran screamed and tried to run to him, but the soldiers pushed her away. Mission completed, Captain Jiho reported into his communicator. "The target is eliminated." Returning to base, but across the galaxy, 17 different alien civilizations were already mobilizing. Their fleets, ships that had not moved in decades, were powering up their engines. Ancient weapons were being loaded. Warriors who had been at peace were putting on their armor. The Valdorans had just killed the most beloved human in galactic history, and in 2 hours they would learn what that mistake would cost them.